every Friday we have a speaker come out. Today we have Philip and I have been friends for a very long time. I'm actually not used to seeing him suited up. I'm like, wow. So he and I cycled together and have cycled together for probably 10 years. So I'm used to seeing him in his latex, lycra, whatever, bibs, and
essentially lingerie on a bicycle.
Yeah. And one of the things that's fascinating, so we were talking a couple weeks ago, and we don't normally have service providers up here. So we really try and have entrepreneurs, innovators, people, investors. But he was telling me a story. He just bought his competitor. And the story behind it and why he did it and how he did it was actually really fascinating. I thought it'd make a great topic for today's presentation. So I'd like to introduce you to Philip Ward. I'm very excited to have him here.
Well, this is my first time here. Hi, my name's Philip Ward. I'm new. This is the first time I'm speaking on this subject. I do a lot of training within my own broker-dealer world. I teach other advisors how to build processes in their business, grow through the use of technology, delegation, and things like that. So when Mike asked me to talk about this, I found it a little bit challenging because, to be truthful, I didn't buy my competitor. I stole his business. But how did that happen? So I'll give you a little background about where I come from. How I got in the industry was a friend of my parents said, hey, if Philip can pass the test, we've got a job for him. I said, awesome, I'd like a new job. What he meant was a desk and a phone book and a phone. Start with the letter D, because that's where the last guy left off. So that's where I started. Fast forward a little bit, I ended up working on my own, working on my house, started hitting the ceiling in terms of income, because it was just me. And if that phone rang at 3 in the morning, I would answer that phone, which meant I had no personal time. Then I thought, I need some office space, so I got office space. And this kind of thing wasn't available, which is fantastic, by the way. So I got some office space, and my wife now worked for me, and I'm now working 80 hours a week, and the phone would ring, babe, it's for you. Who is it? I don't know. They asked for you. So no systems, nothing at all. I'd get some filing done. She's like, I'm leaving, bye, see you later. So I needed some help. And I found this company that did some marketing, and I was thinking it's marketing, but really what it was processes. And built in those processes were delegation. And I went from this ceiling of I was hitting my head against doing everything on my own to fast forward now. I now make in about 3 weeks what I made in an entire year. I have a staff of 5. I only focus on the things that matter and make money. But to go back to where the buyout came from, I moved into this building. I moved to a larger space, moved in this building. There was another financial advisor downstairs for me. And I always look at my competition, not as competition, but as a peer or a colleague. And ultimately, that's what paid off. We used to be at the same broker-dealer, which means we cleared our business through the same firm. When he would go on vacation, I'd cover for him, and vice versa. So it worked out very well. While we were there, I found out that the firm's policy was if you do not have a written agreement to sell your business, and you expire unexpectedly or are no longer able to work, they'll send a letter out to all of your clients, and it says, Bob's no longer with us, choose somebody else. Which means the value of everything you've created goes to 0 overnight. That's pretty tragic, right? So where the corresponding thing is with many entrepreneurs, many solo business owners, or maybe you've got a small group of people, you're growing. And this is who I was. I had a buy-sell agreement with younger people than me because I saw the need for that. I didn't want to leave my wife hanging out there going, great, you've spent your entire life building this thing, and the moment something happens to you, it walks out the door and I'm left standing here with whatever's left. So I have that built in. This gentleman wanted a reciprocal agreement, but he's 20 years my senior. No, I didn't want that. So he never signed anything. About 2 years ago, I ran into him in the hallway. He said, Philip, I want to talk to you about, and he made this gesture. And I'm like, hey, you know what, great, I've got to run. going out to a conference. I'll get with you next week. Next week came about, didn't see him, no big deal. Finally, his assistant came up to see me and said, hey, can you help me out? I need to place a trade for a client. Where's Bob? Bob's in the hospital. All right, none of my business. I don't need to know. Take care of it. I'm like, do that, take care of your client. A couple days later, same thing happens again. Where's Bob? In the hospital. What, you can't take him a flipping laptop? Right? This is because I'm a tech office. Everything's technology based in my office. And no, Bob's unconscious. Okay, what happened to Bob was he went in with pneumonia. He was working 7 days a week, probably 90 hours a week to make ends meet. And he ended up in the hospital with no buy-sell agreement, not ready to retire. His wife is sick at home. And sooner or later, they're going to send a letter, which means the employees will be out of a job and the wife is out of income because he's still working in the business. We end up taking over his business. And I make an agreement with the wife because she's not licensed that I will pay her what he was taking home out of his own business. I'll take care of everything else, which we did. So we started meeting with clients, and I went from managing about $40 million to $80 million in 5.5 months. And we did it without missing a beat. Now, to me, that was just, okay, great, we got that done. But what I'm realizing is that that's kind of a big deal. How many companies could double? Now, if you've got one client, you go to 2, that's not bad. But if you go from 220 to 440, how do you do that? Right? And do it effectively. So when I bought that marketing system, it taught me about delegation and processes. By outlining every single thing you do, it makes it much easier to carve that piece out and give it to somebody else. And we were able to do that. By the time the dust settled, we ended up hiring, we took on his staff. They didn't work. One of them was, I had this conversation while we were waiting. One of them was skimming off the top, taking money out of his account. She'd spend 2 hours to go to the bank every day, and she kept the checkbooks. And she'd tell him, you need to work a little harder. We need some more money. We're running low. She didn't last long with my business because I'm like, no, you don't get the checkbook. That's my job. And it's one of the things I refuse to delegate is the money. Every time I've heard of anything bad happening in a business, it's because my controller ripped me off. They weren't keeping tabs on it. So that's the one thing I don't let go of. So in this process, I've become, let's see if this works. I went from a financial planner who happened to be a business owner to a CEO who is now a financial planner, but I'm still responsible for 80% of the revenues that come in. So I'm still in production. So how do you get from this position of you're basically the sales rep, if you will, and now you've got to deal with all these other issues. 5 employees means 5 personalities. That takes a lot of time. I had no idea. Somebody asked me, what takes up most of your day? HR. Well, I don't like the way they did this. It just kills me. It sucks the life out of me. Some of the other things that you find you're dealing with is that everything is bigger. Payroll takes longer. And payroll, no matter how big you are, I was talking to some friends of mine. One of them has 100 employees. Another one has 2,500 employees. We all have the same issue. It's called cash flow. If you don't constantly bring in the cash flow, the employees, the cost of labor will eat it up. When you're growing, each time you add more to your business, you add complexity to it. And the problem with complexity is it can take over everything. And the goal would be that the profit or the growth outpaces your complexity. And I think a challenge that we all face as you're starting, if you're a startup or whatever it is transitioning from that delegate, that you do everything. I know when I first started, I took out the trash, cleaned the toilets. Nobody else was there to do it. It had to be done. Now, you've got to look at yourself and what's your value in terms of an hourly rate. What are you bringing to the table? So this is actually part of a workshop that I teach to other financial advisors. So I'm going to skim through. Oop. So back. Where do I go back? There. So this is kind of what your day might look like, right? You do all of this stuff. Everything is on you when you start out. But you've got to start finding a way to delegate that and getting in a position where you're focusing on the things that only make you money, not the things, minimalizing the things that don't. But not everybody wants to be like me. Somebody says, well, what's your limit? I don't have one. I will not be happy here. There's no here. It's somewhere up much higher. That's just how I'm built. So the question is, not everyone wants to make more money. Not everyone wants to work. Maybe some people just want to work less. You know, now I work 44 hours a week, and you guys are invading in my bicycle riding morning. It was a big ask. I'm like, oh, Mike, Friday, gosh, you know, the Amgen Tour of California is going on. The men's stage is up right behind my house today. I missed it last year. But here I am talking to you. So, I don't have a whole lot more to add to this than if you've got a business, you need to know who your competition is. Not because one day you're going to take them over, or vice versa. They could be the people that bail you out, right? Something happens. And we all know something bad has happened in their life. But the business needs to keep going. So do you want to be the person that is left like the guy who I took over his book and dictated the terms I was willing to give? Or do you want to be in the position where you've already got something in place, a contingency plan, so that everything you've worked for is in some way, shape, or form going to continue? And it may be that you've got two people in here that are in the same line of work. But what we find is, and I watched this with my dad in his own business. My dad was an incredibly artistic / engineer guy. He made custom electrical signs. That's what he did. But he could visualize how to build them, how to make them from start to finish. And he was really good at it. He was a shitty businessman. He was bad at it. He wasn't good at it. If it wasn't for my mom taking care of things, it's a miracle they survived. And as entrepreneurs, we get into doing the thing we do because we're good at the thing. And I hate to say widgets. What's the new widget? Is there a new widget?
I think there's still widgets.
There's still widgets? Okay, somebody somewhere is still making widgets. And if you're that person, and you're really good at making widgets, you're so good everyone wants your widget. But sooner or later, you're not making widgets anymore, which means you've got to take on a new role. And it might be that there's somebody else that makes kind of an okay widget, but they're really good at business. Maybe there's an opportunity there to protect each other. So you've got the best of both worlds in one scenario. So my message here isn't so much about buying out a business, and which I can talk about, because there's different methods of valuation. But being in a service economy, what are they buying? They're buying your reputation. They're buying basically your client list. And if you have ongoing revenue, then they'll be buying that. And the way to get the key value out of that is to make sure you have systems and processes, because you can pull a person out and put somebody back in. And that's really all I've got to say. It's a pretty short, short and sweet. I hope you got some value from that, but thank you very much.
Thank you, Philip. So we're going to pass the microphone around here to John. This is a great time to ask questions to Philip about service business or even buying a competitor. Not a great time to talk about an accident that you had and when you wish you had somebody buy you out. So first question is, because I know a little bit of the backstory, what ended up happening? So this gentleman got sick and you told his wife, I'll pay you whatever he was drawing, and now time has gone on.
So the guy actually ended up making a complete recovery as we had vacuumed out his office and closed the door. The phone rings. Hi, this is Bob. Excuse me? Is this a joke? He made a complete recovery. And one of the things that we had to deal with was that I took over his baby. And he's like, well, I kind of think I want to come back to work. And we'd already taken over his entire client base. We put his files in storage. Everything's all onboarded at this point. And we're negotiating with the landlord to try and break his lease because we think he's going to, well, die. His wife was asked to unplug him twice. So this comes into he comes back to work, or he wants to come back to work, and he says, I can do this. I'm like, oh, we've got technology for that. I can do this. I'm like, oh, we don't have a position for that. And I was nice enough, I gave him access to the database so he could see what's going on, and occasionally I'd bring him in on a meeting when I'm meeting with one of his favorite clients. And there's this transition period of, it's been 2 years where he's not been willing to give up his baby. But I got a text from him with a video of him and his wife out on Easter Sunday, and it says, thank you for doing everything you've done. And keep in mind, we have no written agreement. It's a handshake. Because the way our industry works, you've got to be licensed. His wife wasn't licensed. She has no right to sell it to me. The assistants weren't licensed. They had no right to sell. I had to take it. So I basically stuck my neck out. I started paying his employees on my payroll and started taking over his clients, which is incredibly risky because I'm now at a different broker-dealer than he was at. So there was some gray area that we had to work with. And if it wasn't for me doing that, he would have lost his business and I wouldn't have benefited from it. I can say that by doing this, I've tripled my revenues, but I've only added 2 more staff, but not the staff he had. They're gone. He had another business. We took that over as well. We're running that. Had to learn a new business in the same time. But it's really changed the way we're looking to grow our business. And we went from 40 to 80 million, and now we're in negotiations with somebody to take over another book worth 90 million. Slightly bigger than me, but we have better systems than he does. So it's really changed everything we do in our office in terms of what we're looking to do and how we're going to grow. So I don't think that necessarily answers the question, but it's a roundabout Rowley's house.
How did he let go?
How did he let go? It took time. We'd invite him in, and then he'd realize that he's bad at what he does. He was getting older. He was 68 when he went in the hospital. He had 2 strokes while he was intubated. It was one of those things where it's like, well, you can come into the meeting, but we're not going to let you ride the horse anymore. You're going to fall off. And anytime we gave him any rope at all, that's exactly what happened. And I think he realized that over time. But you've got to let that person let go. You can't just cut it off. It's their baby, and they've got to come to terms with it. And it's one of those things where, being in financial services, it's not what you retire from, it's what you retire to that matters. He never built himself a retire to, and it took about 2 years for him to find the 2. So.
Over here.
Can you talk a little more about the marketing program you brought on? You said you went for this marketing program and it brought in processes, and I'm wondering if that was some outside commercial entity or if it was just some software you bought or what the whole process was. If you could just give a little more detail.
Okay, so within our industry, there's kind of a marketing guru. He's going to be pushing 75. His name's Bill Good. Bill Good, Guerrilla Marketing. I'm like, that sounds good. I need some marketing. I want to grow. And of course, Mike's like, huh, let me tell you. But at the time, this is all I knew. So I bought this software, this package, and we had to fly to Utah. And I took my wife with me, and it was 10% of our annual revenues for the year. She goes, honey, what if this doesn't work? I said, we're going to be paying on the credit card for a really long time. And first 2 days, she's sitting there with her head spinning. And about the 3rd day in, she leans over and she goes, we're going to make a lot of money. Because it all came to. So the marketing software was really about systematizing the office, not so much about marketing. And this was probably 15 years ago. It was just continual touch. This was before we had, you could just send out an email to everybody. We were actually folding and stuffing mail on a regular basis. The market would have a bad day, and we'd pump out a letter and get it out in the mail that day, all hands on deck, So that's really what it was. But the background behind it was these processes. And where he got that from is that he would have these advisors in his test track what they would do today. When you're talking to a client closing business, you press the button. When you're done with the call, you press it again. And what he found out is that the average value when you're working with a client, and I would imagine this is for any business, it's $1,000 an hour. Now think about your day. Is everything you're doing worth $1,000 an hour? This goes back to that slide where I showed all the things you're doing. Some of those are not money making. So what that taught me was think about your time and how you spend it. So it was just a system, and I don't use it anymore. I've graduated to something else, a lot more techy. But yeah, built-in delegation and marketing is what it was.
Up front.
One other follow-up. So you also mentioned that you're about to buy another competitor college.
Yes.
And so how is that process different? And what steps did you go through in terms of evaluation in both cases, if you could contrast those and kind of the process of it?
So within our business, or within our industry, basically valuations are done off of reoccurring revenue. And a fair price is about 2 times book, which means if you made $1 million this year, I'm going to pay you $2 million for it. That's simple math. And usually there's a number of ways to work it out. Some people want it up front, some people want it over 5 years, whatever their scenario is, depending on their retirement need. This particular gentleman wants $250,000 up front because he wants to buy a new boat. That's it. He's like, take over my clients and the revenue's there, pay 50% of it quarterly for the next 5 years, and we're done. Which is a great deal, because I also know that when you take over someone else's book, especially when they're aging within their industry, they're not working it anymore. So if you're a CPA and they're not looking for the referrals, if you're in a lawyer, they're not looking for the new referrals, which means there's a ton of undiscovered new assets in there. And I remember, so Bob said to me, I said, yeah, that one client that was only $150,000. Did you know they had $1 million in their checking account? He didn't believe me. He said, I'm going to pretend you're lying to me because I don't want to admit that I missed that. So how you value a book is based on what's current, but generally what's built into it is all of this unfarmed opportunity, if you will. So as far as buying other businesses, though, you've got to put a value on what your reoccurring revenue is, what the goodwill of the company is. And I'm not a specialist in valuing other companies. And I'm sure sooner or later you'll have someone up here that will guide you much better on that. But I would say make sure you know the rules of the industry you're in, and understand what fair value is. I've got a couple of reps I oversee are buying somebody else's book right now. They're younger, he's older. They're only paying him 3 years worth of revenue. 50% for 3 years, 1.5 times. They're stealing it. Whereas if I wanted to sell mine on the open market, I would imagine I could probably get 3 times booked because of the systems and the staff I have. So, yes, sir. We need a mic over here.
I have a question.
Oh, hang on a sec. You're next.
And then I'll be over here.
Yeah, you mentioned that you bought, this other, the gentleman that you took over, Bob, you said he had a second business and you took that over too. So what was that business and how did you decide to take it over instead of selling it?
So he had 2 employees. One employee ran that business. Anyone ever deal with anyone in a skilled nursing facility? A loved one, a parent? Okay, $10,000 to $15,000 a month. Your burn rate on cash is unbelievable. In the state of California, we have Medi-cal, as opposed to every other state has Medicaid. So, gentlemen from Colorado, you might have heard of Medicaid. We have Medi-cal. The rules are different. That company takes assets and shifts them to the next generation in a very particular order to qualify mom for the same bed, same nursing home that's $10,000 to $15,000 a month, and all it's going to be, her share of cost will be her Social Security, which means we've shifted that money down and we've protected it. Perfectly legal. Sounds like laundering money, feels like laundering money, feels illegal, it's not. But we had to learn that business and take it over, and we systematized it. His employee was not a systems-based person, she's a scatterbrain. Every time she wouldn't follow a system, we put another system in place to help track the system she wasn't following, which in hindsight, we became micromanagers, and she said, I hate you guys, and she left one day. But we had enough resources that we could pick it up and run with it, and we did. So it was kind of an interesting side business. So we do the gifting on the financial services side because it's very specific, and if you double up on a gift, it blows it. So yeah, it's related, but somewhat unrelated as well.
Over here, Philip.
Yes, sir.
So, yeah, I believe you're the key man in your company. Have you guarded against if you were somehow unable to work for a period of time? How would your company function?
It would probably function quite well, so thank you for asking. My first employee, which was the scariest day of my life, by the way, hiring someone to work for 2 hours, 2 days a week was frightening, is still with me. And she's gone from being data entry to now she's my chief compliance officer. She's fully licensed. She'll take over the business. She's going to own it. But I have another advisor who's 10 years my junior, who's got all the same licensing I do as well, who will help her run it. So I'm not too worried. And revenues may drop a little bit, but I'm not concerned about it because my wife's buyout is 50%, not 100. So I built that in already. It's one of those things where, Bob, the gentleman I took over, he was a CFP. Can't flipping plan is what I thought because he had no trust, no will, no buy-sell agreement, nothing in place. It's one of the things I've made sure we have. We've got all of that in place. So we have 3 layers. My youngest takeover person is 30. I'm 52 this year, so we're good to go. My kids are 7 and 9. One of them says she wants to be a financial advisor, but a bit early to tell. So I'm hopeful we'll still be there for one of them. So, Juliana.
I had a little bit of a different question. What did you learn about yourself during these processes, and how did that lesson impact both your professional and personal life?
Great question. I learned that I'm a good delegator. I'm bad at HR. The thing that makes me a great boss for them is that I'm super lenient and what have you. It's also the thing that my wife's like, why haven't you fired her? Which is an interesting dinner conversation, but nonetheless, it's not something I'm good at. And so if there's something I probably should outsource, it's my HR part. So I've learned that I'm not good at that. I learned that what I thought was just something that anyone would do, people have come to me and said, there's no way I could have doubled in 5.5 months and still kept working out, still gone bike riding on Fridays, and still been home for dinner at 7 o'clock every night. So I learned that I've got a pretty cool organization, and what's spun off of that now is that we're now creating another company where I'm going out to other financial advisors and saying, look, here are our systems, here are our processes, here's our tech, here's everything, and oh, by the way, my office staff can be backup for you, much like this environment is for the entrepreneurs in the room that need a place to start. I can now offer that to financial advisors for a monthly fee. So what it's taught me is that I'm really good at creating systems, and that's one of the reasons why I think we're successful. So yeah, it was certainly a growth opportunity, and learning to be a CEO is harder than I thought. Yeah, it's a lot more responsibility. A couple questions back there. I did hire a coach, though.
Yeah, I'm just curious, 2 questions. One, what was the catalyst for you knowing you needed to transition from being in it to working on it? Was there a specific event? Did something happen? And then my second question is, focus on revenue. Do you do that every day, or is there a day where you focus on the process, building the process, or making the process better?
So the catalyst from going from, so 3 questions, from being the financial advisor to being the CEO, there was no one event. It's one day I realized that somebody's got to do this, and how I was spending my day, it meant that my appointments had to be, I used to sit down and have coffee with my clients. You want to spend 2 hours with me? I'm totally happy with that. I love to talk to you. Let's talk about your kids, my kids, what have you. Now, a lot of that has been compressed. So my staff actually monitors my time more than I do. They hold me accountable more than anything. It's like, Philip, you've got another appointment. They'll come knock on my door and say, you need to wrap it up. Somebody's coming in soon. So that transition kind of made me realize, okay, I need to be a better CEO. I can't say there's one particular thing. It was just oh boy, you need to do this because nobody else is going to do this for you. What was your second question?
Do you focus on?
Oh, metrics. So daily, every single day. I actually heard something. Anyone know who Dan Locke is on YouTube? Okay, interesting guy. My wife found him and said, Philip, you might like him. So I happened to watch this video of him yesterday interviewing this entrepreneur, and he says, focus on 8% growth every day. And I hadn't done that. Mine was over the course of a year. But I like what he said. If you focus on growing your revenue by 8% a month, which is not that big of a deal, you'll double in a year. And I've never looked at it that way. So yeah, I focus on my revenues every day. I've had this spreadsheet going back to 2004, where it's my daily production goal. Every single day I'm looking to put a number in there. Not every day anymore. It's just that when I do put the numbers in there, they're bigger numbers now. So it makes it easier. And then there was a third question.
Well, just so that sounds like that's revenue-driven activities that you focus on.
Yes.
What about the process-driven activities? Do you do it on the same day? Do you have a day a week? Do you have somebody else that works on it? Because you just said one of the things you feel like you're really good at now is creating these processes.
Yeah. So they're constantly changing. Everybody in the office, the girl that started with me 15 years ago, because this is the only job she's ever had, I will confess. That's all she knows is how to do processes. So we're constantly analyzing every workflow and everything that happens to add whatever needs to be done or take out. And now I've got somebody younger that's joined us. I speak millennial. I know how to spill the tea. So you get that. So I've got this 27-year-old, and her job now is to review all the processes. I want her to understand everything, because I think we have a lot of overlap. Because you start one thing, we've got to do that. Okay, we've got to do that. Now you're doing all this stuff, and you realize we could probably combine it. And there's other things out there, especially when it comes to marketing, where we can actually automate things like birthday cards going out, and rather than somebody actually handwriting a birthday card, which is what we had been doing. Archaic, but it's nice to get a signed birthday card rather than the from everybody at. So yeah, we analyze it on a regular basis. It's ongoing, always looking to save a step or what have you, but it also makes sure that we never miss a step. And in my industry, our compliance is through the roof. When I first got in the industry, we had a one-page app and you wrote a ticket. Now it's 12 pages of compliance before you get to sometimes a 52-page application. It's insane. So compliance is a huge issue within our firm, or within the industry itself.
Okay.
Hey, so I think you've rubbed up against a really interesting business idea with helping other CFPs who are unwinding their businesses or retiring and offering to take that over, to help them out, to help them unwind and come up with an exit plan for their book. How do you find CFPs that are looking to unwind their businesses? How do they typically handle it now? And is that a line of growth that you're pursuing?
Yes, I'm pursuing it. So how do I find them? Well, I'm affiliated with a broker-dealer. A broker-dealer is anyone with whose securities license needs to be affiliated with a broker-dealer, whether it's Merrill Lynch or Morgan Stanley or my firm, whatever it is. You've got to be affiliated. Because of the growth I've experienced using the processes, I'm now one of the speakers at their conferences. So I was in Virginia last week teaching a bunch of reps how to build their business model to make sure that they can grow. And what I found is they're lost. Most of them don't have any plans whatsoever. But it's that group of people. I look around the room, one of the younger guys asked me, why aren't you RIA? Which means I'm fee only, not affiliated with a broker-dealer, which would be nice, because that's where most of my compliance headache is. We're governed by somebody called FINRA. They're a pain in the ass. They have no idea what they're doing. But they come in and make my life a living hell, but the Conversely, I now have access to 200 reps, all of them older than I am, except for the one guy. I said, look at the room. What do you think I'm doing here? The guy that I'm negotiating to buy his $90 million book from, he said, you're like Miss Pac-Man. So you're here to gobble everybody up because it's the people that have the systems and the staff that are going to survive in this regulatory environment we're in. And I don't, depending on your business, you may have a ton of regulation or you may have none, lucky you. But we're heavily, heavily regulated, and there's not too many financial advisors that have a chief compliance officer on staff. They usually delegate that to their head office, whereas we actually have one, and that's all they do. It's nothing but compliance. So we're able to add a ton of value just by bringing them in that respect.
How do CFPs typically unwind their businesses, though? Unless the tooth fairy, you, happen to show up.
They die in the saddle. They literally die behind the desk. Or they let it attrition. They go, okay, so I'm making 300 grand a year. If I just stop looking for new clients and maybe the ones I don't like, I don't service anymore, I'll keep making, maybe the next year I'll make 250, the following year might be 225, and it'll just go down over time until it just twitters away. Because if we're only going to give them 2 times book, that math actually makes more sense financially to keep doing it. Right? It is crazy. So ask your CFP, your financial advisor, do they have a succession plan?
So Tony Robbins wrote a book called Money a couple of years back. He interviewed, I think, the 50 best investors around the world. Have you read it, and what do you think about his advice in that?
No, I haven't read it, but I had a client just come back from his retreat in Fiji and went, here's the book. This is what I want. So I haven't read it yet. And honestly, I don't know what advice he's giving in that book. So I'm not at liberty to comment. But there's plenty of people out there that are selling opinion. And you're actually touching on something like he walked in, he's all I care about is my fee. Well, okay, fine, we're being hammered as an industry on fee, but people don't understand what we do. So we're compensated by managing the money for the fee, but we make sure that you draw Social Security in the right order, along with your wife taking half of yours in the right order so we can let hers incubate till she's 70. We make sure that your trust is set up and your kids get your money when you want to get them. We make sure that if you do go in a nursing home that it's covered effectively, we don't get paid for that. That comes out of the fee. So, I think maybe there'll be a shift in the model within our industry, so it'll be fee for advice rather than fee for service. So that would be my only comment, but I don't know what the book says.
Okay, hi. I have 2 questions actually. One question is, for every dollar that you bring in, what's the cost of it?
Too much. It's expensive.
It's always too much, but.
Well, so basically our business model is on a 1% margin.
Whoa.
That's what we net that comes in the door, and out of that 1%, I've got to cover my overhead, my staff, bonuses, salaries, benefits. So it's super skinny. So the only way we can do it is on volume. So yeah, the cost of acquisition per client ranges anywhere from $300 to several $1,000s. Like when if we put on a workshop,
Yeah.
it's going to cost me $10,000 to get 18 people in the room.
Right. And the other question is, how involved are you with the insurance business? Because the insurance business does a very close job.
I'm going to split the word insurance into 2 forms. Your home auto, workers' comp, that kind of stuff, fire and casualty.
That's right.
We actually have a resource. I've got a guy in the office that does that. Life insurance. I don't get into health insurance. That's another specialist. I farm that out. Life insurance I'll take on depending on what it is. I happen to have a favorite policy right now, and call your agent. It's John Hancock Vitality. You get a free Apple Watch, and if you're fit and healthy, you actually get a better rating on it. So, there's that. But I'm involved in it to the degree that it's needed for estate planning or business buy sell. But other than that, that's
Right.
really all I get into it for.
You're not a licensed.
I am licensed.
Oh, you are.
I am licensed.
Cool.
Yeah. So,
Thank you, Philip.
all right. Thanks, Lucy. Before you come up,